Hey YouTube, it's Bub's Comics coming at you with a No Faces comic chat. Today we are the Marvelous Monster Mob because it's Halloween type season, and why not, right? So say hi to everybody. I'm Bubs. Say hi, everybody else.
What's up, DS Comics here?
Greetings, everyone.
And you are Mr. Greetings.
No, I'm Metarog.
Oh, okay, good. We got that straight
Yeah. Mr. Greetings was the cancellation, apparently, because he's not here. Yeah.
That's all right. So this will be our special first semi-annual Halloween event. Just saying that because may not, or it's our biannual. That's it, our biannual Halloween event. I think I'm going to take next Halloween off. Just feel that way already. I feel a little sick. May not make it. What else we got? Let's see. We have in the chat already waiting on us because Roger was having some technical problems, but we got them all straightened out. We got JPL Flash, DS Comics. Well, that makes sense. JPL Flash and DS Comics. I guess that's it. No, Crimson Comic. Rayman's here. And that might be all we have so far. There's plenty more watching. That's all I see in the chat so far. So hello, everyone.
And Plastics is here.
Also. Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and Deadpool 2323 is in.
Comic Geek McD. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We got 12
awesome.
people in the chat.
That's fantastic.
Great crowd tonight, guys.
Now what do we do? And we got Mike over from up across the border. Nice.
Yes, Area 51.
Well, cool. All right, guys. Well, we better get started off early. First of all, I hope you all had a fantastic week. Any major pickups or major scores this week for either? Now, when I say major scores this week, we're talking about comic-related scores. So let's keep it clean, y'all.
I'm too old for any other kind of score, so.
That's not true.
It better be comic-related.
My grandmother used to say
keep the streak going with the redhead. So yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah, we went down the tubes already. So
yep.
Roger, my grandmother used to say that just because there's snow on the roof doesn't mean there's no fire in the furnace. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I live in Florida, so there's never any snow on the roof. So.
Fair enough. Let's see. So we have any big scores this week, you guys? Did you pick up any big ones?
Well, I've got a big one. I'll go ahead and jump right in there.
Jump in there.
All right, so I've got two books I'm showing. This one here on the right side is a pickup that I just got today. Didn't have time to make a video today, but I picked up Tomb of Terror 15. Beautiful Lee Elias cover. This is one of the books I've been looking for quite a while, but this year I've sort of got serious about finding one, and I've lost a few auctions on them, and I've passed on a couple lower grades. I almost bought a 2.0 this year, and I also almost bought another 2.5 this year, and I'm sort of glad I didn't win or purchase either of those because I ended up with this nice 3.5. So yeah, this is just an awesome pre-code horror, just in time for Halloween, and nice. Just a great one of my top 10 pre-code horror books.
Wow.
And you said that's Lee Elias?
It is Lee Elias, and I just pulled out one of my other favorite Lee Elias covers that I've already had in my collection just to pair them up.
Yeah, he has this way of drawing things, projecting out, which is kind of like pretty. It's kind of like his signature. I mean, I noticed that he likes to do that a lot. That's a technique that he uses. That's the only way I can identify his art.
Yeah, and he's got it's not prevalent on this Chamber of Chills books that he did, including the one I'm showing. But on the Tomb of Terror, you can see in the background there's sort of like almost a starburst effect behind the image. That's really reminiscent of the stuff he has done in the past. He did a lot of war titles with a lot of exploding jeeps and people flying from landmines, and it has that sort of signature style explosion. And that's what's going on here. And I have never read the story. I usually buy reprints or collections or omnibus of pre-code horror books. I haven't read this one, but it's my understanding that this is a robot. And if you look up close, you can see
I see the gears.
Yeah, there's like gears coming out, some nuts and bolts, and just a gruesome scene. So apparently that's a robot, but maybe a a cyborg android type thing. I don't know, but I haven't read the story that's in this one. I will when I get it in a reprint. But just a classic cover.
Looks good. What about you, Roger? You pick up any big ones this week?
Well, if you look in the chat, you can see that Deadpool 2323 said, Roger, you can talk about my score. So what happened was that on Saturday there was a garage sale, actually nearer to him than me, and they had showed on Craigslist, some Secret Wars 8 comics on top, right? So he called me, I saw it like about 10 minutes before he called me, and he goes, hey, I'm going to go down there. And, are you going to go down there? I go, yeah, I'm going to go down there about 9:30. And so he went down there early, and the guy, I guess came out to him and said, hey, are you looking for something? And of course he said comics. So he bought this really huge score of comics. So I met up with him a few minutes later, and he showed me what it was, right? And he just gave me a couple, right? Like, here is one of them. Nice. Probably a VF-ish, I'd say, Secret Wars 8. But guys, he found 21 Secret Wars 8.
Wow, that's amazing.
And a couple of them were just absolutely 9.4s, 9.6s. We started going through the trunk, and we just kept finding more and more and more. And he also found, I'm going to leave a little, I'm not going to tell you everything Deadpool 2323 because I want to leave something for your haul. But he also found a major key.
Nice.
A major key. And a lot of the stuff was, kind of 90s independence too. Apparently this was somebody who had speculated because they had sometimes 20 copies of an issue or more. So it was an amazing stuff that he just kept pulling stuff out and out. And there were some Silver Age, like Superman, things like that. I'm going to leave that up to him. And he also just gave me these mini comics, which were in there.
Very nice.
That's World's Finest. I'm going to put them here aside. Again, I wanted to pay for them, but he insisted. He just wanted to give them to me because he's the one who he was like, oh, I feel bad that I didn't wait for you. I go, why would you wait for me? What if somebody else came? Get them. Forget about me, Yeah,
what are those little mini comics? Are those like little square bound ones from the 90s?
Yeah, these are the digests, that they put out in the early 80s.
Early 80s, okay.
Yeah, and these are all reprints. I think there was only one which I have. It's a Legion issue that is a not reprint. He just gave them to me. I mean, they're not in great shape, but you know me, I love the mini comics. So I was going to buy him off him. He just wouldn't have it.
All right, well, he's telling us in the chat. Tell us what he paid for all those.
Guys, he paid $100 for all those comics.
Oh my god, that's an awesome deal. Just those Secret Wars, even if they were all like 8.0s, that's a nice score. You're saying they're very fine to near mint, and some were creeping up to the near mint plus range. Just the stack of Secret Wars 8 that you got is worth, several $100 easily. Oh, yeah. So that's quite a score. And I hope Deadpool 23, you're in here in the chat. I hope you'll make a video and show us. I can't wait to see what else you picked up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. Guys, when I saw it, we were like giddy, high-fiving the whole bit, just like two big fanboys. But man, I think actually just the non-key stuff he could probably sell and make up most of his money. Because there was just so much of it. There were, maybe he can chime in, but I would say there are at least 200-300 comics in there.
My goodness,
easy. Man, I tell you, I was so happy for him, because he's a family man, and he, we know that he is really good about getting the most out of his comics, and he wants to make a big purchase, which he was telling me about, which I'm not going to divulge either, but so I'm pulling for him, and so I'm very happy for you, Deadpool 2323, and thank you for he called me. Okay, he didn't have to do that. I was going to call him, but he saw it the night before. I said, go get it, and A huge score. Huge score.
You got to get up earlier, Roger, and meet him over
Yeah,
there.
apparently. Yeah, apparently he's got. I tell you, he's got like a radar sense for these things. He really is. I am very fortunate to have him near because this guy is a hunter extraordinaire.
That's awesome.
Well, I've seen on his channel he's done quite a few videos showing hauls that he's picked up, and you're right, Roger. He picks up some nice collections, some nice little lots he picks up. It's great when you pick up a lot that has like where somebody was speculating, you get a stack of like 10 or 12 or 15 of a certain comic, and they're worth a decent amount. And when you get a lot like it sounds like he got today, you can flip those, easily recoup your money, make a nice profit, and then turn that into a book you're really looking at. So whatever he's going after, that should definitely help. That's one of the most fun things, is picking up a lot like that, and then you can flip it and pick up a grail for yourself.
Yeah, I think
awesome.
Based on what he was telling me, he's going to be like 80% there, 75%, 80% there for what he wants to get. So again, I'm very happy for him, and just a great, a great friend. Again, he didn't have to do this. He didn't have to give me anything. He didn't have to call me. He could have just said, "I'm getting this for myself." No, that's not the way he is. He and I are the same. We like to have team, finds, team hunts, because the thrill just goes up 1,000% when you do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, when you guys come across some Golden Age horror books and an awesome lot of those, keep me in mind. Just
trust me.
I love that stuff. So if you come across any of that stuff,
yeah, trust me, we will. I told you when I saw that one that I texted you about.
Yeah,
you were the first one I texted, because I had in my mind, I'm gonna give this stuff to DS. He's gonna like go crazy, and so close. But anyway, that's enough. Some other day we'll get that done. Don't worry.
That's awesome. I had a little bit of luck this weekend. I kind of fell off the wagon of not buying books. I fell off really hard, like down a hole. But the hole was lined with comics. So when I hit the bottom of it, I felt really happy. So no problem. So like I've been working my way towards Giant Size X-Men 1, but it's hard because it's such a high dollar, for me, that on the way there, it's hard to just ignore every book I see. And what I had finally decided was that book's kind of not going anywhere. It hasn't been going anywhere. I've been watching it for about a year, and it's still the same price. It's not moving with the other books. So it may have reached its max, or maybe it's just holding steady. Either way, I can pick up some other books that are moving right now, and kind of focus on that instead. So that's kind of what I'm doing as default, because once you buy that first book and now you don't have enough for the big book, you might as well just buy 10 more, right? So because you already missed the mark, right? Might as well wait till next month. So I picked this one up. It's a Greg Land. I showed a couple of these off already in a haul I put up this morning. But this one from Greg Land, just love the werewolf cover. I think it's fantastic. Super psyched about this one, which was my Avengers 196 first appearance of Taskmaster, and he has a cameo in the one just prior to this, so 195. But that's just a great, if you're after a Taskmaster cover, that's it, right? So, and this one has a little bit of a resto story behind it. So when I got it, it actually had the name Daryl written across here in red ink, like all the way down. He wrote it inside the A. And so that little punk's out there somewhere. And when I find you, Daryl, if you're watching, watch your back, because I'm coming for you, buddy. But anyway, it had a big Daryl written across there, and I worked for like 40 minutes trying to find. And personally, I mean, look, I wouldn't if I bought a book thinking that it was a 9 point something and then turned out that it had restoration on it, I would be super mad. So it's not like I'm a big fan of restoration, but for books that I get a ridiculously low price on, like this one, and one of my really only things is I don't like writing on the cover. So when I saw this book, and I picked this book up for less than $10, and I was just jumping up and down giddy, and I didn't even give it a second look. I just threw it in my stack and bought it, right? So then when I came back to going through them, I was like, oh, where is it? Where is it? And I saw it, and I saw that it had Daryl written across the A. Oh, I was sick to my stomach. So like, you know what? This will just be a fun restoration project for me. So I worked on getting that Daryl off. I think if you guys can see, it did a pretty good job.
How did you get it off? You didn't color it in? You like erased it or what?
I tried everything. So I'll show you.
Because written in pencil's decent, or those grease pencils they used to use. Those you can get that stuff off. But pen, a red pen. What did you do to get that off?
I'll show you just how deep it was. You can still see over OJ's. You can still see where Daryl bled through. Can you guys see that? Like right there where my finger's at?
Yeah.
He wrote Daryl
just a little bit. Yeah.
And it bled through. I was like, really? That's ridiculous. There you go. See it there. Ruined a perfectly good O.J. Simpson advertisement, too. You can't beat those. Well, you can, but then you got to run. So, sorry. Too soon. So first I tried, my first thought was crayon, like a wax crayon. And I thought that would go over it pretty good. Didn't work. Just smeared it even a little bit and left it real waxy. That was no good. Then I tried rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip, just slightly in the grain of where the letters were. And that got some of the red off, but it didn't get the rest off. So, but it did actually pull up quite a bit of red. And I figure with yellow, it would be a little bit more forgiving because even if it all turned kind of whitish, it would still look better than somebody's name written on it. So, but then I couldn't decide what to do. It had started looking worse than when I started, right? So, and then I was like, well, what if I took a piece of tape and colored it? And I was like, well, if I could color the tape, I could color the book. So anyway, sparing you guys the entire 45-minute fiasco, I settled on a piece of double-sided tape, and I cut out a piece of yellow from a Harbor Freight advertisement. You guys, I don't know if you guys have Harbor Freight.
Okay.
In your area, but it's like the exact same yellow that they use in their advertisements, like a tool place, right? And it's the exact same yellow. So if you get up really, really close on it, you can see just a little bit of color break right there and there. And that's really the only place that you'll be able to notice. And other than that, it's pretty spot on.
So you like put a yellow patch over it and taped it over. So the red is still there. If you lift, you can tape that piece of yellow off that you taped on, and it's back to work. Okay. All right.
Yeah. That way, if someone else doesn't like the idea and they'd rather read the name Daryl for the rest of their life, then they can just pull this right off with no problem. Should never turn too hard. Now, if it's 50 years from now, no one's going to care. If someone's that interested in this book, it'll be just like a piece of tape on the inside, and nobody would care. So anyway, that's what I did with this book. So, and I love it even more now. It's got a better story now than it did before. So I love it. Now it's displayable because with that Daryl written on it, there's no way I would have put it up anywhere. So now I can put it up. So there you go. That was and then, well, go ahead.
No, I said, Tat said, you better hope it wasn't Daryl Dixon or else you'll be in trouble.
I ain't worried about it.
For Walking Dead fans.
I ain't worried.
You should be.
No, it'd be all right. I'll come get him. Next time I see a kid named Daryl in that neighborhood, I'm going to trip him, and then I'll ask him later. So
I just hope you don't down the road. I just hope down the road somebody doesn't uncover this fantastic Mile High type collection owned by somebody named Daryl, and he's got all of the keys, bronze, copper, a bunch of silver keys, and they give it a pedigree. And the way to recognize the pedigree is the red Daryl on the cover, and you're not going to get a pedigree when you send that in to get graded now.
It's got double-sided tape. I'm in the clear.
All right.
It's removable restoration. And I think that's what I'm going to focus. If I had to pick something to do in comics that was not in the collecting side, maybe I would try and be a removable restorer. Yeah, that's it. Restorer. That's what I'm going with.
A restoration remover?
No, a restoration adder. But
a restorer.
It can be removed. Okay. Like a restorer that can be then unrestored easily. I don't know. Like something that can go either way. Does that make any sense at all to anybody?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nope, no sense to me at all. but then nothing you do ever does, Bub. So I guess that's just par for the course. But yeah, what DS is saying is right. I remember there is a book, like a Lamont Larson book, where somebody erased his name off of it, and you can just see the faint outline.
There's a bunch of books in the Golden Age that have names written on them in pen or pencil that they're not pedigrees, but people who collect Golden Age recognize them. There's recently a collector bought a collection that was owned by somebody named Leslie, and they all have Leslie written on the covers. And a lot of those have spread out among the community and collectors of Golden Age. And when you get one, you're like, oh, you got one of the Leslie books. So it's, you know, for older books, I have books with writing on them all the time. It doesn't bother me as much as it would on a modern book like that Taskmaster book. But yeah, I have writing on a lot of mine, and some of them I've got one from a Catholic school that was given out in a Catholic school, anti-communism, I guess a pro-Christian, anti-communist type book. It's got writing on there. A little kid wrote his name on there, and I think a parent or teacher wrote their name on there, and it sort of adds to the uniqueness of the item. But yeah, on modern books, I wouldn't buy something that said Daryl on that A. So yeah, it definitely looks better.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have bought it had I seen it with the Daryl written on it. I think I would have passed. So I was kind of mad at myself, even though I paid less than $10 for it. I was still mad at myself. And then I was like, well, you know what? We'll just make this a fun project. And I couldn't be happier with it. I don't think I would trade this for like an 8.0 CG seed. I would keep this one. I might also buy that one, but I wouldn't get rid of this one.
What grade does a writing of that nature? Let's say if it's a VF normally, and it has a name like that written, you know, in a fairly conspicuous place. What would that bump it down to? Or, I mean, sorry, what would that bring it down to?
Well, in my experience, a name written on the cover is not going to bring it down that much. You can still get a 9.4 with a name written on the front. If it's completely near mint and absolutely gem perfect and has a name written on it, they probably give it a qualified grade and just list that it's a 9.8 qualified with a name on it. But, you know, you can get – they don't take too much off for date stamps. A name written on it, you know, something like that. It's you can still get easily in the 9s with something like that. And date stamps on older books don't affect the grade at all. They don't take off for that at all. It's considered part of the industry and the community.
Yeah, I figured at 9.8 or whatever it would be a flaw, but I thought it would bump it down, you know, a grade or two if it had some kind of writing.
What about with a piece of yellow circular double-sided taped to it? What do you think that would bring a 0.5?
That's definitely qualified because it's you're adding restoration, right? But
yeah.
Well, they probably would not lift up the tape, so they're going to see. Yeah, I don't know what that would be interesting. You should send it in and see what they do, because tape generally is not going to lead to a restored grade. But they're going to see that there's a piece of paper taped to it. I don't know. I'm not sure what they would do with that. I'm no expert, but that would be an interesting grading question.
That would be. If anyone wants to, once I get over 1,000 subs or something, I'll turn on the super chat. And if you want to donate, if anyone wants to donate $30 to this experiment, then I'll consider sending it in.
I mean, it would not surprise me if they listed that as restored with a piece added to cover. You know, that would maybe fall under that category.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah, that's what I would think. Something like that. I mean, yeah, even if it's reversible, it's still restoration at the point that you submitted it. So I think that's what it would be.
Yeah,
that'd be fine with me. My other big pickup, I just got this in today. I haven't even put it in a haul yet. I'm always hesitant to show. Like, I used to show DS. I used to show you, like, send you text pictures of what I was picking up even before it showed up to me.
Yep.
I'm like saying, you know, this is the one I bought off eBay, and show you a picture of it. But I stopped doing that because I noticed you stopped watching my videos. Because I was like, he was like, well, I already know what he got. I've already seen it. Nothing, no news here. So I've been.
Well, there's a lot of other people out there making videos, as you might not be aware of this, Bub, but you're not the only one making videos. There's a lot of other ones out there, and you're throwing haul videos up every day. I can't keep up, man. You'll be getting comments on ones you did a month ago, probably, when that's the point where I'm probably at.
I'm just teasing, but I really wanted to show you that I had got this book, but I was holding off because I wanted to show you on the chat tonight. So I'm glad it came in today. Otherwise, it'd been another week until you got to see it. But I picked this up this morning.
Oh, very nice. Awesome.
And I think she's a beautiful. Now, some people might not care for all the wear and tear along the spine, but
some spine ticks,
sure doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
No, that's Detective Comics 400, first appearance of the Man-Bat.
Yeah.
Everybody who doesn't recognize it, but yeah, awesome. Neil Adams cover. Right? That's it. It's a great book.
So I'll be seeing Neil Adams in the first weekend of December, I reckon. So I already have my Tomb of Dracula #1 signed. I'm going to get this one signed. And I'm finally going to get to ask him my big question, which came first, the city or the characters? So we'll see what he says. I think that he drew the cityscape first and then realized that the characters were going to be too small. So then he added them in. But it could be that he drew the characters and then added the cityscape. But I don't think he drew it all together.
I picked up this book earlier this year, and seeing pictures of it and other copies of it, and before I owned my own copy, I always thought that Batman and the Man-Bat were in the air, fighting in the air, and that the cityscape was far below them in the background, and this was up close of them way high up in the air fighting. And it wasn't until I got a copy of my own that I realized they're gigantic, larger-than-life figures standing in the midst of that city.
Yeah, it's artistic license. Cover.
Right.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought they were in the air though. For decades, I've seen that book. I thought they were up in the air.
I love it.
Yeah, it is a very unique type of cover. It is.
It's got such an odd perspective. So maybe he did draw them up in the air and then realized that he had to fill in space and put more at the bottom. There had to have been one that came first. Either he drew the guys first and then filled in the flooring and made it like that, or because it's so larger than life, and so how could that be representative of what's happening inside? Because there's no way that they both took giant pills or anything like that. So I think it's a last minute decision. So I just wonder which came first. Now, this might be the time that I find out just how nasty he can be. I'm trying to think of a way I can phrase it without insulting him. Like, hey, it looks like you just tried to save this thing. What'd you do here? See what he says. But
I'd be prepared for a smarmy remark because
he's going to say,
"Oh, are you my editor now?"
Yeah, he very well might take that. Any way you say that might be taken by him as a criticism of his cover work there. So, but that'll be interesting. I'll be curious to hear what he says. And sometimes for covers like that, the artist, and Neil Adams has done this before too, more recently on some of his 90s covers. But he would draw the background as a separate drawing, and then the main picture as a separate drawing, and they would juxtapose the two together to make the final image. And the original art, if you buy it, is one or the other. They're two separate pieces of art, and that might be the case with that one. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not an expert in the original art area, but I've seen that.
Yeah, he did a lot of amalgamation of art. So you're right. He would do the for example the figures, and then that would be on one original art page. Then he would do a background on another, and sometimes he would actually do a third one, depending on what space was allowed. I read an article like on Comic Book Marketplace or some one of those magazines a long time ago where it gave an example cover, and I don't remember what it was.
So in that case, who would be responsible for collaging it together? Would it be like the editor or a separate artist, or did he do it? Did he then paste them together?
I would assume he did it. And then it would go on to the inker if there was one, or on the line colorist, etc. But I don't remember. If I can find that article, I'll bring it up for next time.
And that was early Bronze Age. That's like 1971 or something, isn't it, that book?
Yeah.
So, it's quite possible that they even cut out the one and pasted it over the other, whoever did the page arrangement, and then use that for the final cover picture. And then they would have cut the trade dress on the top and the title and placed that on the page. And they were still doing that into the Bronze Age, where they were cutting to pieces and sort of arranging them and pasting them down and using that.
Yes, I've seen that in the shop I used to work for. We had a few of those where they actually had, like you said, the trade dress, and it was just taped on there.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like really affixed per se. It was just sort of taped on there. And
a lot of the shading on those books sometimes, they had like stock paper that had thicker or thinner distribution of dots to make the grays as opposed to the whites, and they had like lined paper, and they would cut out pieces of those to fit certain patterns to make shading or that dotted sort of gray tone effect.
Correct.
And so they had all these little pieces of paper cut out and pasted onto a single piece, and that became the cover art. So
yeah, it's almost like three-dimensional, because you would have little, like you said, little fixtures that were, or little cutouts that were thicker than the lower layer, and it was bizarre. The ones that I've only seen 3 or 4, but those were, when I saw them, I was like, wow, that's really bizarre. I don't know how they get it so that it looks, so clean two-dimensionally, but the original looks fairly messy with a lot of different notes and things.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Wild. All right, guys. Well, let's get into our topics for this evening. Really just one at this point. So a little bit of background on this one, I guess. Well, actually, DS, why don't you tell us about the email that CGC sent out this past week?
Oh, okay. So I didn't read the email in depth, and there's apparently a lot to it. But I guess the gist of it is that CGC is giving an incentive to people who have books slabbed by other companies, namely PGX and CBCS. And if you send a slabbed book from PGX or CBCS to CGC, they will regrade it and slab it in a CGC. Basically, they're offering you an incentive to switch to their service, and they give you a discount on the grade. And if the grade goes down, if you send them a PGX 6 and they grade it and it becomes a PGX or a CGC 5, they'll give you a discount. They'll give you $10 off, I guess, if it comes back as a lower grade from them. There's kind of a bit of there's been a little buzz on YouTube. I don't know that anybody else in the world cares, but yeah, I mean, look, this happens all the time where companies offer discounts or coupons or incentives to switch. I think the most aggressive cutthroat industry for this practice is cell phone companies. Yep. Verizon and Sprint, AT&T, they're always, I mean, they'll pay your bill. They'll give you free phones. They'll do anything to get you to switch. They'll buy out your
contracts, everything.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, this happens all the time. It's not unusual. And, but there are some people that think that CGC has the power and the control of the industry, where they're trying to get rid of PGX and get rid of CBCS and own the entire industry and make a monopoly. I mean, yeah,
of course they are.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's what PGX would like to, and CBCS. They all want to be,
That's the laissez-faire economy. I mean, if you can't keep up, if you can't do a better product, if you can't do better customer service, you're going to go under.
Here's the thing, though, for me. I thank you, DS. That's exactly at the heart of it, of what I wanted shared. The main thing that I take issue with, I have no problem with whatever they want to do until they said that they were going to give a discounted rate if the grade goes down. Why are you going to discount if the grade goes down? Is it because you're so sure that all the grades are the same, or that you're trying? I think it's a backdoor way of saying, hey, I'll give you a higher grade. We're so sure that we're going to grade your book higher after we get a hold of it, or at least the same, that we're willing to give you a discount if it goes down.
Well,
I think that there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
If I were to believe one or the other, I think CGC is going to grade them the way they grade anything, and it's going to be based on their grading standards, and what it gets is what it gets. I don't think they care if it comes out higher or lower than what the other slab is. But really, if they start giving out lower grades, that's actually better PR for CGC, because they can say, look, these other companies are slack graders. We're the legit graders. Look at everything that's coming PGX and CBCS to us. We're giving a tougher grade to. So, I mean, you're not getting accurate grades from them. So, but, I think they're just going to grade it the way they grade it. And look, when you sign up with CGC, they give you a huge bonus where you get free services to start. So, I mean, $10 to get a new customer, they're still making money off it. They're getting new customers. I don't think they're worried about it, whether the grade goes up or down.
Well, they are, I think, and it's for the same reason that you just mentioned. So, okay, so if there's no incentive for them to give higher grades or to alter the grading structure, because that probably would be more labor intensive to retrain all these people and then try and get them to keep their mouth shut about it, right? So assuming that most business practices here are not going to be of the nefarious sense, then perhaps they're just trying to encourage people. They're trying to skew the numbers. So if you take in, if you offer a discount to a segment of the collector population that has a book that potentially they think will get a lower grade, so therefore you're going to discount them and say, hey, look, if you bring in a book and it gets a lower grade, we want to encourage people to come in who may get lower grades. And in order to do that, we're going to give you a discount. Because otherwise, if I come in and I bring a book and it gets a lower grade, I may not bring them another book next time. Not only that, but now I have a lower grade book. It has less value, right? Even though now it's in a CGC case, now it has a lower value. So I'm getting a small rebate because of that, or a small discount. But if CGC can get more and more people to come in who end up getting lower grades, then just as you said, DS, that actually kind of helps the CGC's narrative that they're tougher on grading. Because now there's going to be a lot of books that will get flooded into the market that once had higher grades and now have been quote unquote corrected, right, by CGC, and now have the correct grades. And so you can entice people who may be on the fence or have books that do have higher grades that maybe they should be a little lower, and say, look, bring your books anyway. Don't worry, because we need your books in the number stream in order to show that we are tougher on grading. And therefore, I guess by some feeling, as tougher is naturally going to be more correct or more accurate. So what do you say about that?
Well, I think you're overanalyzing it. I don't think it goes that deep. Look, they're trying to get new customers. They're offering you, an incentive to switch. What the real meat of the matter here is that all the PGX slabs are going to get lower grades. Everybody knows that. Okay. Everybody knows the PGX ones that get sent to CGC, they're all going to get lower grades. The CGS ones are all going to be within a half a point.
For a fact, there are people out there who have YouTube channels. We were watching some of this debate go on all week who do not believe that and adamantly would argue that.
No, they may adamantly argue that, but nobody believes it. Look, every collector who's serious and uses these slabbing comments. Yeah, and I'll discuss this with anybody. I know there's channels out there, there's collectors out there, and I'm not saying you can't use PGX or it's not good, it's cheaper, it's quicker, whatever. We're not talking about the PGX quality of their service, but everybody knows that when you send a PGX slab to CGC, the grade's going to be lower. It's just almost invariably, and everybody knows that, whether they want to admit it or not. Now, the CBCS ones, they're all going to be within a half a point above or below the CGC, because both of those companies have pretty consistent grading standards. They're both using the Overstreet grading standards pretty consistently and accurately, and there's not going to be much discrepancy between the two. I think they put that 10% incentive in for people who send PGX books in that are not really familiar with grading market, and they're going to send in 10 PGX slabs, and they're all going to come back lower. They're going to give you, well, hey, we'll give you, $100 back.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Hey, this is on your channel, so when it gets a couple thumbs down, no skin off my teeth.
That's no wonder DS can be so opinionated, right? Hey, listen.
Absolutely.
The thing here is that I guess the fear here, right, is that CGC will monopolize, right? Because they'll sink the other guys to the point that they'll go out of business, right? Is that a found fear out there? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's the worry.
So. That's what some people are worried about. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So if that's the case, if that is the case, then that's not on CGC, because they're not doing anything unethical, illegal, or immoral. What they're trying to do is saying we are better, and we want to prove it to you, right? And listen, I'm not a grading. You know this. I don't believe in grading, really. I mean, to me, it's something which is only for very, very few rare, older books that need to have a protective case and to have a providence, all that. I understand that. But for, ASM 300 or Hulk 181, I don't think that it's, to me, I don't believe in it, right? But if that's the case, and our country, our economy is based upon competition. So what does that mean? CGC is trying to do this. PGX and CBCS and whoever, Ted and Fred's grading service, they have to up their game so that they can do something similar with CGC cases. And so it's all fair.
I would agree with most of that. I think that what happens is that people tend to forget that to speak to your point about, whether grading is silly in and of itself, or it can be for most cases, especially for modern books. I think that what happens is people tend to forget that the full name of these companies are that they are not grading companies. They're third-party grading companies.
Right.
So if I have a book that I look at this book and I see maybe a 2.5 on a good day, right? I look at that book and I see a 2.5. So to me, that if I have to use a number scale at all, to me, I just think, hey, that looks pretty good. But PG is not a rating. So, so to me, I say, oh, all right, it's pretty good. It's about a 2.5. If I were grading it, I'd give it about a 2.5 on a scale of 10.
Right.
And so that's first party grading, right?
Right.
And then if I send this off to CGC or PGX or CBCS and I get it back, that makes them a second party grade. And that's not what they're meant to be. When they come back to me and they say, no, we think it's a 1.5 or something, or a 2, and I say, well, I disagree. Well, now we just agreed to disagree. So what do? Mm-hmm. Crack it out of the case and waste my $30? Probably not. So the only time that you need a third party is when I, the first party, want to sell to a second party, and we need to get someone who's supposed to be impartial to come in and provide a third opinion. And the only value that opinion has, and I'm not talking about the case, I'm talking about the number on the case. Okay, so not about the case. I know they're pretty and everything. I'm talking about the number on the case. The only value that actual number has is when it leans or corroborates one of the other party's opinion of the grade. And the only time that you can trust that is if there's some sort of legitimacy behind the company or behind the people grading or behind the system. You have to trust them. Otherwise, you say, I could say, yeah, well, I'm first party. I'm going to sell this book at a 2.5. You're second party. You think it's a 1. Okay, well, let me get my buddy Larry over here, and he's going to give a grade. Well, nobody wants to listen to what Larry has to say. Yeah, I want to know what he has to say because he's my buddy, but nobody else cares. So instead of just being Larry, you got to be PGX, CGC, or CBCS and have something of character to your company. And I think that's where the real product is. The product is only in the reputation of the company, because anyone can have a pretty piece of plastic, and there's lots of ways to protect the books, and there's lots of ways, to actually have a book and still be able to read it. But if you're paying for the actual grade to have someone grade the book, you have to remember that it's a third-party grade. And if you like what you've got and it's your grade, then keep it. But only when you're going to sell a book do I think it even makes sense. And to me, once it's sold, you might as well just crack it out. If you intend to keep the book, then the grade means nothing anymore, because the only grade that matters is your grade. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, again, if you're bringing into the equation selling, that's a different dynamic now that we're talking about, because like when you're going to buy a car and you're not a mechanic, you want somebody to check it out, make sure that it's running, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a great analogy.
Legitimate, right?
Yes.
So yeah, if I have my Hulk 181, if I wanted to sell it, yeah, to maximize my profit, I could have it third party graded. But that's because that is because my intention is to sell it, right?
Yes.
But if my intention is to slab it for my own collection, that's when it doesn't make sense to me.
I agree.
Well, let me say something about grading here. A lot of people throw the term out, and I see AG Surfer just threw this out there too. And a lot of people say it in videos, and I hear it all the time. Grading is subjective. Grading is subjective.
Yeah.
I really take issue with that statement, and I totally disagree with it. I don't really ever hear anybody that says what I feel about grading. I feel it's pretty objective, and that's the whole point of the grading companies. Look, grading has been a part of the comic hobby for many, many decades. Long before there were any slabbing, and there was the Overstreet Guide to Grading among some other sort of types of grading were thrown around, and the Overstreet Guide is the one that sort of became the standard for collectors and dealers and comic stores, and that was basically the standard, and it became very well developed and broadly used across the hobby. And when slabbing came along, CGC, CBCS, and PGX purportedly all adhere to the same guide. And this is a new copy of the Overstreet grading guide.
Right.
Essentially, CGC has more information on their website than the other two grading companies, but the other two purportedly have done this similar type thing. They have taken the grading guide, the Overstreet grading standards, and on some of the aspects in the grading standards where they were a little ambiguous or vague, or it wasn't as exacting as they thought maybe it should be for a professional grading company, they actually went out and surveyed professionals, people with experience, comic shop owners, dealers, to get a little more clarification on certain parts, certain aspects of the grading. And they adhere to this grading standard. And this is the whole point of this slabbing and grading and holding your grading standards to this Overstreet guide and standards is to remove the subjectivity. Like Bub said, I think this is a 2.5. It's pretty good. I might think it's a 3. You know, this takes the subjectivity out. There's very strict standards. You go through the book, certain defects limit the grade. You can't get higher than a certain grade with certain defects. You know, you add the defects up. There's a chart you can use, and it's very extensive, and it takes years really to become familiar and master this. And I am nowhere near that. But these grading companies employ professionals that are familiar with this. They use this standards to apply to the book, so that if you send the same book in over and over, it should essentially get the same grade. And it should be the same from all the grading companies. So I think the whole point of it is it removes the subjectivity. So the grading should be pretty objective. It's a book. I mean, if you have the book form here, you know, it's got, I don't know how many pages, a few hundred, 300 and some odd pages of grading standards. This is no longer subjective. These are highly valuable collectibles in some instances, and these grades are supposed to be objective based on very strict standards.
Well, BS, I'll take exception to this, and I'll tell you why. The standards are objective, but the people and the companies are subjective. Because if you take those standards and you take 3 different people, it's very, very, you know, if likely, if not possible, that you will get 3 close but different grades. And in fact, I know several people who have sent the same book in various times and gotten 3 different grades.
Yeah, I mean, what CGC does is they have 3 graders, and because of this is what they do. They have 3 graders look at each book, and then they have a supervising grader looks at the grades of the 3 graders that graded the book, right. And then they assign a final grade that's consistent with what all 3 graders felt the book was. If there's some large discrepancy, then they address that, however. But yeah, they'll have 3 graders look at it. You know, if you send a book in and it gets a 4, and if you resubmit it and it gets a 4.5, and you resubmit it and it gets a 3.5,
yeah,
you know, you shouldn't have books from one grading company as a 6.5 getting 8s from another one. There's too big of a discrepancy there. And what that does is it leads people to think that grading is subjective. Well, that leads me to think that one of these grading companies is not following the standards closely enough. And they don't have the experience and the professionals doing the grading, and they're giving out 8s on things that really should be 6s according to these standards.
Right. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say the discrepancies would be that large, but I do think that because we're talking about humans that are fallible and have bad days and have, you know, just issues around them, that affects their ability to apply those objective standards. I mean, I was a supervisor of units for many years, and I saw this day after day after day, that their work performance was, you know, contingent upon a lot of their mental and physical health. And because we're talking about humans and not, you know, computer programs or something like that doing this, you're going to have those discrepancies. You're right. But my point is, it's objective to a point. Certainly the standards are, but the way that they're applied are not totally objective. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of gets into a sort of a semantic discussion at a certain level, but yeah, nobody's going to come up with the exact same grade. If you have 100 people grading the same book, you're not going to get the same grade from all of them. But certainly. You know, there are certain defects that limit a book to a certain grade, and that book should never be above that grade with that defect. Like subscription creases, you should not be getting 7.5s on books with subscription creases. You know, a 3-inch chunk missing from a bottom corner of the cover, that absolutely limits how high that book can go. And you know, there are Well, I think if CBCS books are submitted to CGC under this crossover thing, which is going back to what we're talking about,
right?
I essentially think they're going to be all within a half a point, higher or lower. I think CBCS and CGC are essentially using the Overstreet grading guide pretty accurately and professionally in a manner that you're going to have dissimilar grades. But I think the PGX ones, they're mostly are going to go down in grade for the most part. And I think everybody knows that. And I think, I really don't think CGC is offering the service with PGX in mind at all. I don't think PGX is going to be around that much longer. I think they've already sealed their own fate over the course of many, many years. I don't see them having a future in grading. But what's going to happen is CBCS needs to up their game or they're going to really be hurting. And if they go out of business, it's not going to mean CGC now has a monopoly. There will be a vacuum created in the industry and another company will arise. I mean, there's new companies coming and going all the time across all industries, and hopefully there'll be a couple more coming up in the comic grading industry here in the next 5 to 10 years. We should have more options.
I don't necessarily subscribe to the vacuum theory. Why aren't we talking about BUB'S price guide right now? Instead, we're talking about the Overstreet price guide. And why is that? Because no one ever talks about any other price guide. Every time there's a monopoly, it's not a monopoly unless you truly control everything. But if you don't control everything and instead you're just the only game in town, and you're the only game in town because we don't need another game, then that is when that happens. So I don't necessarily agree that there's always a vacuum just because there's only one person out there. Usually the other companies are just too small and can't compete unless that company is sleeping on the wheel, and these companies are too young to be that aloof about their business model. Obviously, they're continuously charging forward and trying to gain new customers, and that probably won't stop. So the other thing that I after listening to some of that is I think that although it is an argument in semantics to some degree, I also believe that there is a philosophical question at play here, and that is there a correct grade? And I think if you ask that to each person, you would find which side of the fence they truly lie. Is there a correct grade to this comic? If I say it's a 2.5 and someone else says it's a 3.5 and CGC says it's a 3, does that mean I and the other person are wrong and CGC is right? And we were just not as good a grader as CGC. And I think when you only have one grading company, it lends itself to that debate or that belief that there is a correct answer. And I think if you ask each of us, if you ask me, is there a correct grade to a comic? My answer is no. I don't know what Roger would say, but I think I know that DS, you would probably say that yes, judging by what you've said so far, well, yes, there is a correct grade to that. And that's a matter of how close do we get to it. But there is a correct grade. Ironically,
when I sell raw comics, I don't put an exact grade because I sort of agree with you. I mean, I'm sort of agreeing that there's not an exact grade, although I'm saying that the Overstreet guide is the generally accepted standard of grading comics. So if somebody says something is a 4.0, it's generally meant that that's a 4.0 according to the Overstreet grading standards. But when I sell a book, I will list it as, quote, in the VG range, or I will say it's anywhere from a 3 to a 4. I will say this is low grade. So I try to give an accurate, narrow range. And Comic Sniper did a good video on this. I think it was him, about the different ways people describe the grades of comics. And there's the real exact where it's broken all the way down, like the Overstreet standards, and the CGC grades is what we're familiar with. But then people are listing books or referring to them as low grade, mid grade, high grade, and then they've even broken it down further. People are saying this is a lower mid grade, and then there's the VG, the fine, FN, and the VFs. Those aren't numbers; those are letters. And if you say something is, in a VF range, that could be 7.5 to 8.5.
Yeah, so there's also some more broad, and I did see that video. It's a very good video. If you guys have, and it was Comic Sniper. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. But there was another one that he didn't mention that I've seen coming around, more prevalent on Facebook auctions as well. and Instagram, and that's Minty. It's not mint, it's minty, right? It's like, so what does that actually mean? You know, it's like a synthetic mint, or like when you take a look at it, you'd say, yeah, that's better than good. It's almost perfect, somewhere in the range. It's somewhere in the range of almost perfect. Like, okay, you know.
Yeah, and I don't like selling raw books that are in the 9.4 or up range if they're raw, because yeah, the grading has exploded in recent years, that people who are buying near mint raw books on eBay or whatever, a lot of them are looking to send them in and get 9.8s. So if they find it less than that, they're not happy with the purchase. So, you know, for golden age or silver age books that are raw, that are not in a near mint condition, I think collectors just want good pictures and they want to know the condition. Is it complete? Is it attached? That type of thing. But you know, and I'm one of them when it comes to modern books. I like super high grade 9.8 level books for modern books. And really it does come down to, Roger, the value and the resellability of them. It's not just people want them for their collection because they like the book. There's a value and there's a huge market for comics. These are really valuable pieces of art, and they can be, you know, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference if you have.
For that, I agree that it is a third party company is useful. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference between, you know, a 4 and a 5.
Yes.
Of like a huge major key, or between a 5 and a 6. 1 point can be many thousands of dollars difference in a book value. So it's become it's not going away, I don't think, and it's a good way to. If you have a trustworthy or a professional grading company that has engendered trust in the community, those grades become pretty concrete values.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, DS. It really brings the debate to another level, because not only we're talking about encapsulation of artwork, but then we're also talking about, you know, an agreed upon standard of the grade, and who basically has the keys to that kingdom. And when it comes down to it, there's going to be people who are looking at these books as investments.
Right.
And one manner of protecting that investment would be to agree with and to side generally with the company that has been providing the means by which you can increase the value of your collection. So if I have 20 PGX books, 20 CBCS books, and 5 CGC books, it would naturally be in my best interest, either consciously or subconsciously, as these things tend to run, to say that CGC is not the gold standard, but rather it is perhaps more ambiguous in the grades, and it is more subjective, and any of the grading companies can provide a good grade, and therefore PGX is a viable option, and so are my CBCS cases, because that's where my collection is. And if I spout out and say, oh, CGC is the gold standard, well, now what am I going to do? You know, with all these books that I've actively devalued with my rhetoric. So, you know, and that's why when we talk about some of the other channels that maybe or maybe not getting any kind of compensation, even in the form of free product, if you will, or service for their claims, it further muddies the water as far as what can be considered, you know, is this an objective review of the product to begin with? You know, there are lots of people who are careful not to say disparaging things about CGC simply because they have a bunch of CGC slabs. And the only thing that the company has, other than the quality of the case, as far as the grade goes, is their reputation. So if I bought a bunch of things that basically are testaments to their reputation and then go out and slander them, that would be completely ridiculous and would devalue my collection. So I think that there's something else at play there that is something of a protection of each investor's collection that lends itself to be a little bit more lenient with that company and maybe a little bit quicker to disparage the other companies as fly-by-night, soon to be going out of business, or just completely incorrect or unprofessional.
Well, yeah, I mean, this on your channel, so I'm not going to go calling people out, but some people are receiving.
They're right. It's on my channel. Do as you want.
All right. So we're obviously speaking about We Love Comics here with the PGX endorsement that he gives at the beginning of all his videos. Look, I watch his videos. I've corresponded back and forth with him a lot. I think it's dangerous for collectors who are new to the hobby to take his word for it, or trust that PGX is as upstanding as he's leading people to believe sometimes. But he uses them, so it's not like he puts his money where his mouth is, so to speak. And he likes PGX. He's had a good experience with them. But look, I've asked him numerous times in comments and emails and whatever to answer some questions. Do they have any actual professional trained graders on staff? I've never gotten an answer back from him. Is it just these two dudes working in this dude's house grading comics? He's never answered that. He sort of deflects on some of that stuff. If you go on CGC's website, you can see photos of the graders with their names and what department they're grading in. Some are specialized in, Golden Age Charlton books. Some specialize in newer books. Some are assistant graders. Some are senior graders. You can see their pictures. You can see who's there. You can call the company and speak to somebody in the grading department, somebody in customer service. PGX, you go on their website, you don't find anything. It just looks like it's just pretty basic. You can't tell if they even have any professional graders on staff. And I've not been able to determine that they are any. So, I don't really consider them reliable, or, they're not a genuine sort of professional grading company, in my opinion, because they haven't proven that they have anybody there that's trained as a professional grader. CBCS and CGC are different. I don't think CBCS is going anywhere, but they have an uphill battle, and it's mainly their turnaround times that is the main complaint against CBCS. Their cases are not quite as good as CGC's new cases, but their turnaround times have been horrendous lately. I know they're working to address that. They've made some changes. But PGX is not a real player in the market. I don't think anything CGC does, this crossover thing, I don't think it has anything to do with PGX. I think CBCS and CGC are competing against each other, and PGX to those two companies is pretty much an afterthought. That's my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, very well could be. We don't know what their target is, but for CGC standpoint, my guess would be that they're just targeting any other grading company. They don't care if PGX and CBCS are of equal low standing. It matters not to them as long as they are the sole. All of them want to be the only place to go.
I suppose.
Of course, that's the way it works, right? I mean,
how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll probably get some slabs that are old vault company slabs. They'll probably get some Halo slabs. They don't care. They'll take anything. But really what they're going after is market share with CBCS. Those are the two main players. But yeah, they'll take them all. I mean, I don't have any other slabs in my collection at this point, but they're going to get a lot of slabs from a lot of different companies. They're going to get some Halo, some old vault slabs probably. There's another European or Australian one or something too.
Yeah, the thing with in this sense, I do agree with you, DS. They've been around since what, 2000?
Yeah, I think 2001 maybe for CGC.
Right. So I mean, they have longevity here. I mean, that kind of experience, that kind of business model that they started way back then, and I think they now have expanded into the UK. It just tells me that they want to expand their business, regardless of who is their competition. They just want to up their game. And listen, I'm no fan, as you know that, but I'm just saying what they're doing just makes sense business wise.
I'm not friends with CGC. They are a company that I use, and if they're not giving me what I'm paying for, I'll stop using them like any other company. But I've been satisfied. AG Surfer brings up a good point too here, and he's mentioning how CBCS merged with Beckett. Beckett is a huge, I guess, a baseball sports card collectible sort of company. They bought CBCS, so CBCS has some money behind it, has some corporate wherewithal behind it. Being partnered with Beckett. I guess Beckett bought CBCS or merged with it in any event, but that's a major company. So CBCS and CGC are going to be duking it out for the next, however long. And I want to see both of those companies be creative with their marketing to try new things and force each other to become better. And that benefits us all because competition is obviously better than any monopoly. But I don't think there's going to be a monopoly. CBCS isn't going anywhere. They've got their turnaround time problems. CGC has the Newton ring problems. So they're both stumbling over some of these hurdles in the race, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't consider PGX a player in the market. They're good if you just want a cheap, quick turnaround with a slab for your book. You know, it's not that hard to grade near mint books. I think whoever's doing it there is, you know, it's probably fairly accurate for modern stuff. You know, whatever you want to use for your purposes is good, but I stick with CGC because I like the resale value.
Well, and that's part of it. So the more that they can further their reputation and disparage the reputation of the other companies, the more it can retain its place as the place to go to increase the value of your collection. You know, some people look at a PGX or a CBCS case and they say, that's all good and well, but even if I trust the grade, I got another $30 I have to invest in this book just to get it reslabbed in a CGC. So, you know, there's another aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, CBCS has graded some monster books. I've seen CBCS books in auction. You know, Action Ones, Suspense Comics 3, and a 9.2.
Nice.
In an auction, that's higher than anything on the CGC census, and that sold for like 180,000. You know, there are major collectors with major books sending them to CBCS. So they're nowhere out of the game here. They're fighting it out and duking it out with CGC. I don't see anybody sending that caliber or value of a book to PGX. I just don't see it happening. You know, they're a cheap, low-cost alternative because grading's expensive. It really is. So, you know, PGX, if they can keep their reputation rehabilitated, they can capture a large share of the market of people who don't want to spend a ton on grading. So they have a place in the market. You got to be trustworthy, and you've got to be, you got to have your customers trust that they're getting what they're paying for. And they've had reputation problems. It's not their product or their case as much as it is just people don't trust them at this point. They've had too many scandals.
Well, you've touched on something very sensitive as well, and that's the trust in the company. I don't think it's just about the grade. It's about who do I trust to handle my expensive, rare, and potentially brittle book. And when I think about some dude in his living room, that doesn't make me feel happy. I would worry if I sent a book of very high value, honestly, to either well, definitely if I sent it to PGX. Like, I don't even consider sending an extremely valuable book to PGX, even to get it graded for resale and all the other things that we've talked about that are positive about slabbing and getting grades. I think at some point you reach a threshold where if I wouldn't trust that company to give me an accurate grade, then why would I even trust them with this valuable of a book? It could get damaged if they're unprofessional with it, if they mishandle it. You know, so there's another aspect of it as well, is who do you trust to hold your expensive book, physically hold it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk.
They're insured, right? They have to be insured, but again, you don't have the comic, you'd have the money, but you wouldn't have the comic.
I'll tell you a story.
How do you even prove that claim? You know, you sent it to them via the U.S. Postal Service. You insured it for whatever you thought it was worth insuring for, right? Mm-hmm. It arrives to them in some unknown condition. It's not like you get pictures of it upon arrival. They grade it, they slab it, it comes back to you, and you're going to say, wait a minute, that spine tick wasn't there when I sent it? Well, it's been through the UPS the first time, touched by, according to, you know, to their website, 4 people at CGC, and then put back through the U.S. Postal Service and sent back to you. So good luck finding out who put that tick in there.
Well, I was talking to a collector this weekend who sent, he had a Hulk 181 that he bought way back for like $100 or something. And years later, he got it graded, and it's like a 6.0 or 6.5 in one of the old CGC holders. And he recently sent it in to get reholdered, and they lost his book. And this is CGC. Yeah, so he called them and he's like, look, this says shipped, but it doesn't have a tracking number. Where's my book? I haven't gotten it. And they're like, oops, we sent it out to somebody else's order. We don't know who we sent it to. So they essentially lost this Hulk 181 and a 6.5 or whatever it was. They didn't even know who they sent it to, so it's just gone. Somebody probably is getting a mystery book in their CGC package, you know, a nice Hulk 181 and a 6.5 that's not theirs. You know, hopefully they'll return it, but, you know, CGC screwed that up. They told him they were going to send him the money to refund, to give him the fair market value of that book, and they were going to give him what he listed it for insurance purposes, what it was going to be insured for. And he's like, no, it's worth way more than that now because you've had the book for, you know, a month and a half or whatever. It's been 2 months. That book's worth a lot more now. So I think they did right by him, and they sent him what sounded to me like a fair price for that book, and they're sending him a check so he can replace that book. But, you know, look, all these companies make mistakes, and it's, you know, when I send a valuable book, valuable is relative to me. If I send a valuable book in my collection to CGC, I have anxiety about it the whole time it's out of my hands.
No. I can't believe that, DS.
Look, I've got one right. I've got one
before it gets in his hands. It could be in his neighbor's front yard with a dog peeing on it.
I figured you put a tracker in with that thing, you know.
Oh, I've tried everything, but I cannot. Once it's out of my hands, I have a ton of anxiety, as much as any other collector. So then there's always a risk, and companies make mistakes. CGC botched this one with this guy, from what he's saying. Look, I'm not too worried about companies that make mistakes. Every company's going to make a mistake, but I want companies to rectify their mistakes and work to correct them and provide excellent customer service and be trustworthy and have a good reputation. But yeah, it's always risky to send books out to get graded. I mean, to any company, it's risky to have somebody handle, especially old books, brittle books, books with tears, covers that are barely hanging on. Sometimes will come back as cover detached. What you've got to do, if anybody out there is listening and sending in old or really books that are in rough condition, put a post-it note on it that says cover barely detached or very careful handling, bottom staple is extremely loose, or, you know, something like that, so the graders will know when they take it out how to handle it. But it's always a risk, you know.
Yeah, I agree. We haven't even touched on signature witnessing. There's so much left to this discussion, but I think overall we've beat it pretty hard tonight. Oh. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, that horse hasn't twitched for about half hour.
Well, you know, that's the thing. It does twitch, and it's got a few twitches left in it, but we're out of time tonight to beat on it some more. We'll save it for another time.
It's a good discussion because, like, Roger, you don't get books slabbed. You don't use those services. I use them all the time. Bub, you're somewhere in between. But it affects us all.
They're used for. I use them to sell. You know, yeah. I'd rather buy a slab and sell a slab because I need the third party, as impartial as it can be, to provide a grade for it.
Well, it's part of the hobby and it's not going anywhere. And, you know, some people buy books and crack them out. Some people buy raws and get them slabbed. It's not going anywhere. It's a big part of the hobby, and it generates a lot of money for collectors, buyers, sellers, the grading companies, everything. So it's good to be familiar with what's going on and to know, you know, generally, you know, what it involves. So always a good discussion, whether you use the slabs or not.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys for participating in it. You know, I toyed with putting up a video on my own, but I said, you know, that's really one-sided and you just sound like another crazy person screaming on a hilltop. But this way I can have 3 crazy people screaming on 3 hills, and I really appreciate that much better. So thank you guys.
you have such a way to inspire us, Bub. It's amazing to me, the talent you have to do that.
Absolutely. I'm a mover, a shaker, a motivator.
And you can thank me. You got 1 thumbs down already, so it's probably from my ranting against PGX there.
You have arrived. You have arrived.
Oh, man, I love it. All right, guys. Well, we'll end it here. Everybody's got to get to bed, so or whatever you do.
What? It's only like something.
Like 2 people who are going to bed on the chat. JPL.
Oh, but those are UK people. There's after midnight.
I think your buddy Deadpool 2323. He's already hitting the sack too.
He's got 4 kids. Come on, give him a break.
Yeah, that's probably what he meant by bedtime. Bedtime for them, but
for them, yeah, he's got to probably put him to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beer 30 for him. So, all right.
Beer 30.
All right. All right, guys. Well, I thank you again for being part of the No Faces chat. Great chat going on in the live chat on the side here. It's just blowing up. You guys have been fantastic, providing a lot of great stuff. Thank you all for being a part of it. If you're catching this on the rewind, try and catch us next week live Monday night, usually at 7 Eastern. A little later if we have technical problems, but we're usually pretty close. So thank you all, and I'll say goodnight, and then also if my co-host will say goodnight, we'll put it to an end. Hey, are we going to use our catchphrases, our closing remarks? I'm going to use mine. All right, everybody, read a comic.
Be blessed
Yeah.
and be back.
I don't have one. Thanks for tuning in. I usually just I'm out, basically.
All right, thanks, guys.
He set you up there, Diaz. He set you
I
up.
know he did.
I'm trying to get him to use the one I told him like a week ago. I'm trying to.
I can't even remember what it was.
Let's do your homework. Do your homework.
Oh yeah, do your homework, everyone.
All right. Good night.